Good morning, or depending on when you're watching this, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. My name's Ross, and as always told, out of Voice of Radio. So today, we need to take a look at a special grass energy. Yeah, that's right, ladies and gentlemen. You see, there is a special grass energy coming, and we kind of expected it at some point, right? We know that they're all getting their own special kinds of energy, all of the different types, so it's quite nice that we go and get this one here. Now, it was actually, I don't have a great picture, I'm afraid. It was shown off on a Japanese stream this morning when Cinderace V came through and opened the door for new cards to be shown. And seriously, they had a stream last week where the player lost and they didn't show a new card. They just teased us Pokemon V behind an Aurora energy, which was harsh. But we did get reveals today. We've got Aroma Grass Energy, and our translation comes from, stop me if you've heard this one before, the lovely Antoine Boulet. And what it says is that the Pokemon with this energy attached cannot be affected by special conditions, and you remove any special conditions on that Pokemon. Which is just a little bit sad here. Because all the other ones we've seen do 2 of something and they stack. So, for instance, powerful colourless energy, like strong energy before it, does an extra 20 damage. The fighting one we looked at reduces damage by 20. Lots of 20s and stacking and building up, and this is just like, yeah, mate, you're immune to special conditions. Which, of course, was Wonder Energy. And they are seeming to do this with the new special energies. They're basically taking old special energies and repurposing them for a new type. Wonder Energy could only be attached to a fairy Pokemon, and you prevented all effective attacks except damage done to the fairy Pokemon it is attached to. So actually, it's worse than Wonder Energy in some ways and better in others. The way it's better is that it always protects from special conditions. So something like a Garbodor that would poison or a Mareep that would put you to sleep, they would go through Wonder Energy because they're abilities, not attacks. Whereas Aroma Grass Energy here prevents special conditions regardless of how they're applied, and that's a better. But Wonder Energy prevented all effects of attacks. So something like a Torkoal coming along here, trying to get rid of energy, would be prevented by Wonder Energy, but Aroma Grass Energy is just like, no, it's alright, mate, take my energy, you're good, man. And that's a little bit sad. But getting around special conditions is good. Depending. I mean, the first thing I need to mention here is Jirachi is not a grass Pokemon. And that's genuinely quite relevant here, because Jirachi goes to sleep when it uses its phenomenal ability to look at the top 5 cards of your deck and put a trainer card in your hand. Then, of course, what you do is you use a skateboard to free retreat, but a skateboard is rotating. So we can use Galarian Rapidash, but that takes up a bench space, it's a stage 1, can't be used on your first turn because you haven't evolved by that point, etc, etc. It gets kind of awkward. Having an energy that you could attach to Jirachi, yes, it would take your attachment for the turn and that would be sad, but it would still give you a pretty good out to using Jirachi. And these are actually different, these new energies, to the old ones. This will always provide a grass energy, but you only get the effect, getting rid of special conditions, on a grass Pokemon, as opposed to something like Wonder Energy that you were not allowed to attach to a non-fairy Pokemon, and if it ever ended up attached to a non-fairy Pokemon, let's say you moved it for instance, it wouldn't work. So the real question essentially becomes, how important are special conditions? I mean, in Japan this weekend, they had a big national championship unofficially, and Mill did very well, and Mildex in Japan at least, a bit over here, a bit less over here, I tend to see, play a lot of Mareep. And Mareep sits in the active and puts you to sleep, and then of course you've always got the option of Slumbering Forest, which says you've now got to flip 2 heads to wake up rather than 1. Mareep is, well, it's harsh, quite frankly, ladies and gentlemen. Mareep is harsh. So what you do is you avoid Mareep by just using this. We've seen Raichu in the past be kind of fun, with its automatic paralysis. This is the one from Burning Shadows, and when you evolve into it, automatic paralysis. And especially nowadays with stuff like Scoop Up Net, you can reuse that over and over again. And there are decks built around things like Raichu, Marowak, etc. And you get to bring this up and just get yourself completely immune. That's kind of hilarious. We've seen that Nuzzle decks, and look, Nuzzle decks aren't particularly good. We all want them to be good. We're all hoping they're going to be good. Nuzzle decks have never been good. When Raichu came out in Cosmic Eclipse, we were like, maybe, no. And then Boltund came out and we were like, maybe, and we're like, no. Nuzzle decks have never been good. But they still like to use Nuzzle. And the other thing we need to bear in mind, of course, is that Glimwood Tangle has now been released, or will by the time this comes out. And Glimwood Tangle is for stadiums what the old Jirachi was for basic fire Pokemon. If you flip for an attack, you get to reflip if you don't get the flip you want. And that's really relevant. Electric decks were really good back in the day, but they were known for being just a little bit slow. So what people started doing was using the Dynamo with Thunder Wave, and then they would flip a coin if heads paralysis, but they'd have a 75% chance, and we saw a bunch of tournaments won by electric decks that set up behind a Dynamo that just paralyzed over and over and over again. And that's essentially what we're doing. We're stopping decks like these Dynamo decks that were, the Raichu decks that were, the Marowak decks. And then, of course, you've just got things like Blacephalon. Now, I've made no secret of the fact that lately I've been playing an awful lot of Spiritomb. I like Spiritomb. Spiritomb's fun. But Spiritomb often has like 10-20 HP remaining because you do more damage for each damage counter on it. And it's got an ability that puts damage on it. So clearly with Spiritomb, what you're trying to do is get right to the edge of being KO'd. And then you'd KO their only attacker, and your opponent would bring up a Blacephalon, 1 energy, burn, and confusion. We see a similar thing sometimes with the Nihilego from Lost Thunder, which for a single energy does confusion and poison. And what they essentially do is go, look, I don't actually have an attacker right now, apologies for this, but I can just poison or burn you and you get KO'd from that. And I know Spiritomb isn't a grass Pokemon, and I know that both Blacephalon and Nihilego are going to rotate out when this comes out. That's not the point, ladies and gentlemen. That is just an example. My point is, things like this happen. Things like this happen pretty often, quite frankly. And this gives you an answer. And sometimes it will be specific decks. Sometimes you go into a tournament and you'll be scared of Mill, but you'll know that if you're not asleep, you're fine. Boom! Aromagrass Energy's got your back. But there'll be other times you're just playing it because why not? And then it's got your back. Now there is a good reason not to play this, and it all revolves around Rillaboom. You see, grass decks at the moment are not particularly great, and obviously that will reduce the playability of it. But the grass decks that are around tend to use Rillaboom, because the ridiculous voltage beat ability lets you attach 2 grass energy from your deck to your Pokemon. But an energy like this only counts as a grass energy when it is attached, so that means that something like Rillaboom can accelerate this energy using its ability. That's a bad thing. And if you've got 3 energy left in your deck, but 2 of them are Aroma Grass Energy, you're only accelerating 1 energy. When I talked about Stone Fighting Energy yesterday, I told you that I adored it, and I still stand by that opinion, incidentally. And one of the reasons was that because fighting doesn't use these kind of cards to accelerate energy, there is no real downside to playing Stone Fighting Energy. There is a big downside to playing Aroma Grass Energy. Stuff like Rillaboom won't work with it. Although I still think the upside outweighs it, you just might end up putting it in as, say, a 2 of rather than a 4 of, depending on the counts in your deck. And there are other ways to get rid of special conditions. We've got Galarian Rapidash, a stage 1 that sits on the bench and just makes you immune to special conditions. And we've got Cobalion GX, whose ability makes all of your Pokemon with metal energy attached immune to special conditions. And for non-grass decks, you go right ahead and play those cards. They're literally your only options, right? But for grass decks, I do think this is better. And there will be plenty of games where you just attach Aroma Grass Energy because you might as well, and then it turns out that your opponent desperately needs paralysis to buy a turn to win the game, or they desperately need that extra 20 damage from burn to take a key KO, they whiff it, and you win the game there and then. This is a 4 Wassy card, and honestly that might be a little bit stingy. Special conditions aren't huge at the moment, and we have got stuff like Rillaboom that would tell you not to play special energy, so there are reasons against this. But there's so much potential here. And now, anytime you're playing a grass deck, anytime any deck that is even remotely relying on special conditions comes around, you just have a nice easy energy that you can put in your deck and be like, yeah, now what? Because you can even search it out super easily with Guzma and Hala. This is a good card, and I expect grass decks to really take advantage. But I'd like to know what you think. So let me know in the comment section, would ya? Go nuts, be nice. And then make sure you like this video, subscribe to this channel, follow me on Twitter at The Wassy, and Twitch for some live action at twitch.tv/PTCGRadio. If you want to support the channel, get some bonus podcasts and all that good stuff, head on over to patreon.com/PTCGRadio, where you can do exactly that. But by far the most important thing, as always, look after yourselves till next time, would ya? Thank you very much for watching. My name's Ross, and you've been watching PTCG Radio.